Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spin Rack. I'm here with my boy Petey, who drives me nuts many times. Say what's up, Petey.
What up?
Hey, today we're going to be talking about Iger. Can the Superman stop the strike? Petey, give us a 5 on that.
Is he be a Superman in the Marvel universe, or would he be the Hulk, the hulking Iron Man, or something like
Or the
that?
Doctor Strange.
I don't know. Doctor Strange isn't big enough for Iger. Iger
The
is the
Thor.
Mickey Mouse of
No,
this
no, no.
thing. He is the Walt Disney sans the painted out cigarettes of this thing. He's the big kahuna of this, and now he says he's committed to end the strike.
All right. End the doggone TV, the writers and artists and the actors strike because the
But
directors made a deal already.
But that's a 180 from his saying the strike is disturbing, says that their demands are not realistic. Now, that comes from them doing a lot of cuts at ESPN, struggles at Disney with their parks. The parks have been they had to close the Star Wars hotel. So there's a lot of things, the so-called superhero fatigue, which is not necessarily movie-wise. I don't think the movies outside of the Ant-Man, their launch of the Phase 5 didn't go well, but Doctor Strange had done well before that. Kamala Khan was low. There was just a negative reaction to Secret Invasion, so I don't think it did as well, but there's so much negativity towards Secret Invasion. So ultimately, when this first happened, he was basically like, because to be truthful, we know that we, the public, are more connected to the companies than the actors. At times, the people can feel like, hey, we believe when you don't get what you want, you have a union, you should strike. But at the same time, we're watching TV, we just want our content. So that's what Iger kind of knew, so he was trying to say that. But at the same time, you could see when the transit strike happened, the people were upset, but when they turned to the New Yorkers and when the transit strike, they were like, get your contract. So then the actors haven't gone full on and turn to the fans and say, cut off your subscriptions, ask to help. So at the same time, that helps them. So, and there's things that they didn't get in the last time they tried to strike. They wanted connections, some residuals from stuff that was going on in streaming. And they said, hey, we can't really, like figure out the money for that. So, but wait, we'll fix it. We'll figure it out. And they didn't figure it out. Now they've been trying to get rid of writers. They've been turning to the show directors saying, hey, why don't you just write the whole thing? Because we have someone like Tyler Perry. He's basically pushing out writers. So with that said, Iger now has changed his tune. He's going with a softer, saying he's committed. He's saying all these positive things. But as most people, like when we had the whole the automobiles going to Congress when they came in limos and then they got smacked down by Congress and had to come back. So you can't start and then people not forget how you first showed up. And, this would be I know we put them as there, but you can't just say, hey, we have Mars here. We're going to have a digital Mars and have someone do his voice, and then we're going to video his audio in there. It's not going to be someone we don't pay any money. He doesn't get any residuals. We own Mars's likeness, and then we use him in perpetuity forever. That doesn't work. Why should the companies get a break on this when the actors kind of need this money? So I've talked a lot. What do you say to this? Uh-oh. Big business is back.
You know what? Look, this is a little complicated thing because once again we have a resume in with Disney and Iger.
And it's not going anywhere because there's a strike, so keep going.
But there's a number of issues here. So I think PD has definitely touched the base on bases on several issues here. One being and we'll take them one at a time. One being that the actors say the residuals are too low, especially now that they're going to streaming. And I gotta agree. I think the residuals also on music are ridiculously low. People should get paid for what they produce. I do remember the prior Napster era where people were just stealing music until they went to the subscription model and they went to the Apple Music model and stuff like that. Apple Music, then now the streaming. And that seemed to have worked better. But the reality is nowadays most artists who are musicians are doing most of their money from shows and ancillary things, acting, selling liquor, all that kind of stuff. To the music is basically promotion this way now. And so for actors, it's a bit different. You can't necessarily do that. You don't have the same type of flexibility. You can't have a show. No one's coming out to see you do a show to talk about your acting, right? Like a musician can do a show. They can do different venues, go to different places, and sing a song. And
You
people come
can
to-
do when back in, this is to date myself, back in the actor strike before this one, I guess it would be in the
Broadway
say 1900s, in the year two,
back in the days.
In the 20th century, at the end of it in 1998, I was involved in a group that was basically all these actors that were on strike. It was mostly black and Latino actors, and they decided to come together, and they would put together pieces of things they wanted to perform, and they were no sets, so they were doing like theater, but it was just stuff they wrote, and it was a lot of powerful stuff, and at least a couple of the actors I see still working, and I saw one producer who has moved on who's involved in it. So you had some talented people. So ultimately, they can do what was happening, I think, in 2006 when a lot of actors were moving to the web. If you wanted to, you could start doing some sort of content that you put on the web that is non-union related and put it up there, and then people could connect to this stuff and see these people. And then once stuff happens again, you're back in business.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, go on the web. I mean, there's a great subscription model there. It's called OnlyFans, and you'll get
Not
paid.
that.
It's already connected. And sure, you know what? You can,
OnlyFans.
and so people can see you
Not
walk around
OnlyFans.
and do your acting. So I'm
Not
just saying,
the OnlyFans.
I'm not saying only as something like that. I'm saying the platform was originally made up for you to have your fans come there. There's some people
Wait
who
a
just
second.
don't.
There are actresses that are on there, and people are harsh on them. But at the same time, if you're not casting them in roles, what are they supposed to do?
Okay, I don't know. But look, so the issue is
They have
the
fans.
residual. Yes, that's true.
And I'd like
that's
to
the whole
say,
purpose.
at the same time, I have my own subscription service I'm planning to do. It's called it's like a
Patreon?
No, it's gonna be like a a server for your family and friends. It's called OnlyFam. Like you just come to that show, and it's a good to reconnect with your people.
Okay, so yeah, the residual situation needs to be decided. It's ridiculous that I remember watching someone from Blackish where she was on YouTube and she was just basically showing the checks, like $5 checks. The most she got was $100 residual check, and this is one who was a main cast member, and I think that's ridiculous. Shows that you see, the streaming services are making money by people continue to stream, and so theoretically there should be some type of dollar value every time your show or thing is streamed. In music, I think they said you won't make any money until you've done millions and millions of streams. It's ridiculous. So that's one. Number two is the fact that AI is there, and the writers, you can just go online and AI can go and just grab stuff. So let's get serious. It's not like coming up with brand new stuff. It's looking for stuff out there, and it's already there, and using that as a guide in order to regenerate something. And therefore, if you use it to help, that's one thing, but to take other people's stuff. And they've shown that the AIs have gone out there and grabbed stuff. And so you don't need writers. Hey, we don't need a writer.
Okay.
We just get this.
All right.
So
I'm going to chime in. The hook of it is there's something that I learned in school which is called symbolism, right?
Mhm.
So the idea is that when Hollywood knows this, you're doing Rocky 3. Rocky 3 is Pinocchio.
right.
But at the same time, it's not exactly Pinocchio, right? The beast is, of course, Clubber Lang. He's the one that
Wait,
kills.
Rocky 3 is Pinocchio. Why don't we use like West Side Story? That's really Romeo and Juliet. That's a better analogy. I think most people will get that one.
No. I'm trying to say taking something that's animated, and so what's the name? Rocky isn't a real fighter. Like Pinocchio isn't a real boy, and Geppetto, who's a Mickey, has been protecting him. But then Geppetto gets attacked by the whale. The Clubber Lang is the beast.
I don't think it's the
It's
same.
all there. They even say they have him reading Pinocchio to his kid.
Okay.
It's easy to do that because with it's taking Shakespeare. Just if you go to that model, Hollywood takes things whole cloth, right? So if I take The Long Kiss Goodnight and do Captain Marvel, what's the difference? The setting, superpowers and that
character,
sort of
the
thing.
dialogue.
You have the actor, same actor from the movie is in there. So the AI is saying, okay, what do you want to do? I want to do, this is the Hollywood model. It's like saying, I want Romeo and Juliet meets the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So you put the two plots together and let the AI put it together, and you're like, here's your script. So, okay, we need to trim this and trim that and fix that up, right? So they let the AI and keep putting it in the model. That's the hard part of it. If you take the AI and you have the two scripts, and they're already doing rips of films, putting it together, and they keep elements from the rip in the movies. So you look at this movie and you're like, why does this look so much like the Titanic?
It's called the formula. The formula is you have to have.
So the AI
this
can
and that.
figure the formula.
Exactly.
And at the same time, you take away that and say that the actors are the actors.
So, but what's your point, bro? Are you saying it's okay for them to use it, or are you saying the writers can't?
No,
do that? What are you trying to
Hollywood
get to?
understands that the producers are like, we don't want you to take the story and do something different. We want you to do what worked before. So when you have the great middle of Avatar: The Way of Water, you have the end, which is like the Titanic, which for the popcorn aspect of The Way of Water, it's working, it's fun because there's a lot of superhero. They have like the action-packed avatars and whatnot with guns and all that stuff. So you have a comic book element, like not comic book like this, comic book film, which is a different kind of popcorny, that sort of thing. It was like kind of what they would say is vapid, all this other stuff, right? There's a difference between, it's how people would look at comic books, but it's how films are, right? Like they say Sophie's Choice is like a comic book movie, that sort of thing. So think about it like that.
Okay.
So I'm saying to you, if you have Hollywood knowing that they're taking elements and they're asking for you to keep some of these elements in there and not change it, not turn it differently, not do it any differently, doing something that's only 10-year difference. This is a success. Let's do another, what's that movie?
So, Pete, but what's the point? What are you trying to say? AI or no AI? We know the formula.
I'm saying they're saying because if we're asking them to do this, we should just let the AI do it and then we'll have movies because we're just asking them to do that anyway. But at the same time, when it fails and falls apart, and then someone gets something that's written where you said, oh, you look at Quentin Tarantino and it's like, wow, it just goes against the formula, even though his stories have a lot of stuff from the past in it also, right? So like Pulp Fiction, even though Pulp Fiction was him and Roger Avery, it gave a different sort of film. So anytime that comes in, it has an effect on film. So if you go, but Hollywood is like, hey, just give us the same thing over and over again.
I get what you're saying. So you're saying it's formulaic. If you're doing something formulaic, you can't be saving people's job because the AI can do it. You're basically doing it already. All you're doing is just putting it in the AI format. All right, interesting point of view.
I'm just saying they know that. That's why they're saying it's so easy to do that.
But then what about writers' rooms? So one of the things they've been complaining about also is that writers' rooms, before you would have a series, 26 episodes, the writers will be there from beginning to end, and now you get them to write. You have a 8 episode or 10 episode series on streaming. You do 8 hours. You do those episodes. You don't even once you're done, you're out. You don't come back. You're not there in post. You're not doing production. That's only the showrunner taking care of that and making the decisions. Mm-hmm. And they're not making any residuals, basically. You're paid for that time. So where before they had a job for a whole year, now they have a job for a quarter of the year or a third of the year. And so they can't even make any money off of that. And they can't live, So one of the things the residuals did on that end is that it helped to buy the time to the next job. And one of the things that they did with with them being able to work a full 26 weeks, and of course, I'm not saying we can do all those. I'm just saying that there has to be something where now people get paid for stuff. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to, just so, obviously, it didn't seem like I was clear on the earlier point. They see how easy it's done and how they wanted to stay in the formula. They've been trying to, I think the writer of, was it David Simon who did The Wire? He had a job at HBO and they just, with the strike, they considered him part of the writing thing because they haven't rewrite stuff. They kind of pushed him to say, you're now relieved. But at the same time, he was talking about how they were asking him to go back to your point currently now. They were asking him to just write the whole thing. Right. Why don't you write the whole season? When ultimately the model that was from the past of reruns, the 20, was it the 24, the 25 episodes getting to 100, or was it maybe 32 episodes getting to 100 episodes, being able to package that to an affiliate so they can play reruns,
Right.
and then you can make it with the 100 episodes because they can know how much content they can
Right.
watch, and they won't have to worry about, okay, we ran out of this. The people won't be able to connect with the lower selling thing. Now you can have 3 seasons. The DVD market kind of made that because you can package. Oh, we got
Right.
The Wire. We got 5 seasons. Some were 3. Sometimes you could do 1, and you could package that, and as you keep going
But
on,
how does that help the writer? How does that help the?
because now you don't have to package the. You can pay them with the residuals you make on your, which was DVD sales, and you're reselling on streaming. They should be giving these people.
They're not giving them. That's the point.
So that's why they're striking, and they should give it to them.
Okay, so we're there. So I mean, look, but then Iger and the other guys come back and they basically say, hey, we're losing money. We're not making money. And he's right. Most of these streaming services are losing money hand over fist. They're giving all kinds of incentives for people to join, so it's not working. So the question
So
is...
they made a big mistake. The Netflix audience routinely joins and cancels and joins and cancels.
The churn.
So they said, we fixing that. We fix it. We're showing you weekly shows like the HBO model. So you can't leave, and then we'll have another show, and then you have to stick with that. And they say, no, people are still doing that. People are still canceling. But it's like they're looking at Netflix as a juggernaut and how to take them out instead of saying, how can we give you some content? Now, Disney is still getting hit with the light brush, where sometimes you see on sites like Clownfish saying that Disney's just doing terrible and they're going to get rid of the streaming service soon. Most other people are kind of being like, Disney will figure it out. Right? And they might figure it out.
So Disney just came out with some numbers, right? And yes, their subscriber numbers were slightly lower, but not a huge number. Even though they raised the prices last year, I think it was down a couple million, not too much. And so Iger's like, well, hey, we raised the price a couple of bucks and it didn't really go down, so we're going to raise the price again.
No, he didn't do that.
He literally said that. He didn't specifically say that, but I'm saying the prices, I think he raised it $2 or $3 last year. Now they said they're going to raise it again. And he's right, because the streaming services are not churning enough, making enough money in order for them to make generate the entire income that they want. Then you have the parks, which you were saying before. We're going back to this in terms of Disney. The parks, everybody's like, oh, no one's coming to the United States parks. But guess what? People were going to all the other parks. So actually, park revenue was down, but it wasn't down the way people like it was flat and is destroyed. People are still making tons of money. The park is one of the biggest generators of cash and income for Disney. Okay. Now, in terms of the TV, he calls it linear television.
Whoa.
Hold on, let me finish. He calls it linear television. Yes, linear television is on a downswing. I think less than half of the people in the country continue to have cable, right? Mm-hmm. People are going into the streaming. But it still makes money. It was still profitable. Oh. The profit is 20% less than the year before, and it still made money.
Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off. I do want to say that...
You're sorry.
I'm very sorry. I would just say that a lot of businesses outside of streaming, whether it be supermarkets, tolls, everything is up to make up for what they lost in 2020 and 2020 during the pandemic. So you had gas, which said they were not supposed to connect to any sort of supply and demand. They took the gas prices down during that time, and then they shot them back up, and now I guess whatever it might be. But it was definitely a supply and demand thing when they brought the prices down, which they said gas doesn't work on that. So Disney at this point is trying to get on we need to make back the money we lost. We need like milk, whatever it is, everything is up when you go to places. Why can't we put our streaming services up? But we're working on the model, and people are saying we're just talking about it in the house. Is like, how many streaming services can we get rid of?
Exactly. But look at this. You hit the thing. They killed the golden goose, and it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's Disney. It was Disney was probably one of the ones that killed the golden goose, and that's the cable. And with the cable companies, they used to have to pay fees for the cable companies, right? Mm-hmm. And the problem here was that people were complaining every year the cable companies' prices went up. And so I remember years ago, I was like, hey, man, ESPN, I don't watch the 10 ESPN channels I have. So why do I have all these channels? And ESPN will be one of the highest. They're charging, like, I think, $5 per per subscriber, per whatever. And you're like,
Not including the actual sports
yeah, and
events.
exactly. And so you're like, what the heck is this? You know, because they kept on raising the prices here, and of course it was churning and making money, but people were complaining about that. So they wanted to debundle. Now the fact that they said it before, if you debundle, the price is going to go up, and that's what's happening. You're not either going to have less choice, or you're going to have more, pay more to get all the things that you once had for free, or not free, but in the thing. And so the cable companies, if they had been more circumspect in what they were raising the price for, and say, hey, do people really need 25 sports channels? I like sports, but 25 sports channels, my gosh. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well,
Or allow us to choose which ones we want.
yeah.
And they were like, no, if you get this, you got to take it all. So I'm knocking Spectrum here. Yes, Spectrum. Spectrum, you have if you don't, you have to buy the gold, silver tier. It's like you got to take it all. And there's some things you don't want to have, and there's some things that you do want to have.
Yeah.
So I would say you need to get into a better model. If you want to save your business, it's better to be a little bit more flexible on what people can have, as opposed to have these things where you go from, if you want to have, I think it starts at like 200, or 150. If you start here, in order to get everything, you're going to pay 300. You're like, what the heck?
Well,
and that's with phone and internet included. So I don't want to just knock all that. But
well, these purchases of Star Wars and Marvel were to take on the look at Netflix and saying, why are we giving them money so they can have stream, even though they were getting paid off of putting stuff on Netflix. They were thinking they could take it all themselves. But looking at those properties, and you being a big fan of Star Wars
and Marvel and DC.
But I'm saying, but sticking with Disney, what do you think of the missteps that Disney has made where they're now asking for money? Whereas out of the amount of the Star Wars material, what is the average of what you're liking and disliking?
Right. So, I mean, I think that there were some editorial publication issues that they had, particularly with the movies. I always go back, and I think we've always talked about this, where we said they have great stories in the comics or the TVs or the books, and just follow some of that. But, the problem with Hollywood is they always say, hey, we need to do it our own way. Because, of course, they don't want to pay anybody else. They want to keep as much money as possible. So I think that's one of the missteps. But you also have, like in Star Wars, you have the shows were great. You know what I'm trying to say? I tend to find that a lot of times people say, oh, these shows are horrible. But when you really look at it, they really weren't that bad. It's just sometimes there's expectations. The advertising wasn't good. Probably the audience wasn't the one there. I get a great example. You have Mission Impossible, which I thought was a decent movie, was a good movie. Why wasn't it as bigger hit than Barbie or Oppenheimer?
Tom Cruise did not show up to the Oscars. He said he wanted to, be there for the fans. And I think they kind of hurt him for it. I think that's the only thing I can see outside of the norm, because
but I'm
it
just
was
saying,
building, and for some reason people didn't show up to that, but they went to see Oppenheimer and Barbie.
I think because
Barbie and Oppenheimer.
They kept on talking about it so much, and I think that's just something happens. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It just means that it just didn't catch. It didn't
How
go
many
viral
negative things had they said about Tom Cruise following the protocols and being hard-edged about it, saying that he was being mean and tough on the people. He's yelling at people.
Right.
To follow that sort of thing. So, I mean, you're right, but at the same time, it's just kind of strange because it was just as good as some of the other ones. It did have a villain that was a little fantastical, but as far as the story and how it played out, it was still very strong.
And the action scenes, man,
yes.
It was like, come on.
So you can watch it and it's very entertaining. But I'm just saying, when you look at what they're doing, you don't have to pay, like the Starlin doesn't get that much money for a character like Thanos that was created before they had a creator percentage of 4%. So that's why he said he made more money from DC than Marvel. Right. So you have a lot of content that's reprint money to the creators and probably only reprint money to creators. So you have a bunch of content, and they're using this stuff, but they're using it piecemeal. They're saying, hey, let's take this Fantastic Four versus Ego and use it for our Guardians of the Galaxy. Or let's use our Illuminati and let's put it in Doctor Strange because he is a part of the Illuminati. And let's move this sort of thing. And we got the secret, wasn't it the Sinister Six that everyone says is not going to work? Let's kind of do that with our Spider-Man No Way Home.
So or just reprint it, period.
But you have these stories that are benchmarks in the comic field that they're not doing, but Disney at the same time is looking at it saying, we have a broad audience. like the way say Puffy says to the Locks and say, hey, how do we make sure everyone's included? And we do stories where we do, we have a Kamala Khan and we do the dance numbers. We have the elements that's in, as you were saying, No Way Home, Homecoming, or we have stuff that's in like what's that show, Never Have I Ever, which is an Indian family, East Indian family. So you have this thing where you have that sort of element in there, and the character making mistakes. Or I always go to Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior type of thing. Those sort of kids sort of fare. But
they were popular and people watched them, and audiences continue to do it. Those were, I think, mostly cable or not cable, cable shows.
Yeah, Netflix,
and
that
so
sort of thing.
The question is,
and
how does
Disney.
Iger get those back? And the only way he can get those back in those type of shows and creatives is if he gets the strike over with. He stops the strike somehow. And it may be because, let's probably self-interest. They may not have a lot of stuff in the can compared to some, like, as we all know, Netflix has an unlimited can. It gets stuff coming out, God knows how. But the standard TV show, the standard studios, they have a much longer production period. They take a longer time to develop. They cost much more to do, from the development, from buying the script to developing the script to finding production for the script, all kinds of stuff, and getting all the elements. Whereas Netflix is like, hey, you got something over there? I'll pick it. I'll dub it and pick it over. It doesn't matter. And so I think that's why Iger is like, in order for us to be competitive, to make money, to get out of the doldrums that we are, we're going to have new things coming out. I know he's put a kibosh on some of the shows coming out from Star Wars and Marvel, because of quote unquote superhero fatigue or Star Wars fatigue or whatever. But I think it's more that he's going into more quality rather than quantity.
Well, that's the thing. I think the hard part is when you've read a bunch of Star Wars novels, right?
Yeah.
And none of that really portions or bits, but not the story itself, are showing up on screen. Where I would look at, I seen it in comic book, was like the Splinter in the Mind's Eye, where you get to see Luke and Leia running around and dealing with, a looming the Darth Vader.
Right.
Or in the comic books, you have many different aspects that you can utilize, but at the same time, the stuff we see is just bits and pieces. Whereas that's the thing. The hard part is, well, I can't say that Mission Impossible is, it's not as big as it was, but Marvel could have done that with the Vision. They could have had the story that's in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is the story of absolute vision, where Vision looks and he takes over the world because he thinks he can make it safer, right? And
But isn't that a story of Avengers with Tony Stark and Ultron? Where he
No.
revolts? Isn't that the story of...
No, because at the same time you have the hero thinking that he should be able to fix it, whereas he's thinking he's doing things for the right reason. They're very public things that are positive, and they're just like, wait, this is too much. And at the end, the government is like, what can we do? We want the Vision. And that led to Vision Quest saying, you do a story where Vision takes over things, being the same thing that they did in the Ultron story. You have Vision do it, but he's trying to do it in an altruistic way, but it still goes left. Then you say you have the government wipe him, but they
And Iger.
But that's the story they could have done beforehand, instead of just having him taken apart and then dead, and then they have a new Vision. So he had to die. Then this is a second Vision.
Right, but I'm saying, but Iger, getting back to Iger, stopping the wall, stopping the
utilizing the comic book stuff instead of trying to do from scratch, to say we can't use this stuff because it's kind of threadbare. So you can see what's the name used. But yes, what you're saying with Iger, I think he can go back to go to the content and say, why are we going away from it? That's what worked for them, going to the comic book content. Even Civil War isn't the same elements of that, but at the same time, the same things happen. Something terrible happens, the heroes have to sign up, then the heroes on the opposite side of the fence.
But
They kept the core of the story.
But the movie
gravely.
producers and directors and writers will say one thing. All the Marvel comics have never made as much money as the movies and TV shows. So why should we take a lead from that? Isn't this what Feige's saying, that we're going to take a lead now from the studio, and that's why
Okay, all right.
he controls Marvel Comics now,
You
not the
are
other way around.
you are correct, but then we're doing Iger, so we're going here. When we go to the original Days of the Future Past, right? We have a whole set. The amount of budget that's in these comic books of the desolate world. There was much more locations, much more stuff that was going in there. A bigger budget than what we saw in the Days of the Future Past movie. A lot of stuff happening in there in two 32-page comic books. So if you have, say, like, you take a two-parter that has a past storyline that's fully realized, a world that they're walking around, she's going through this broken down tenement and all that stuff. The budget itself that's in the comic books are bigger than. Then they go to what's thing? The X-Men go to Washington through the Senate hearing, and there's a big fight in Washington. And they kind of had a smaller element to it, but actually having them in Congress, developing all that stuff, that's a lot. Oh, Alpha Flight is back. Side note,
Bro, focus, man.
But I'm just saying, yes, you're right. The comic books don't sell outside of X-Men #1 did it 8 million, but that's still not as big as any other movie. And I wouldn't say the X-Men #1 is the perfect thing to turn into a movie. But if you look at what's in there, they have a fight with Magneto with these nuclear weapons. Then they go to this other land of Genosha where the mutants are. A big fight with Magneto, and then you fight in space. That is a big budget film, and saying that's all these elements could work to my movie to say Magneto's the menace, but he's on the fence. We had the heroes come to fight him. His brotherhood or his acolytes, they're actually working against him. They almost kill him, and on the planet, we don't know if Magneto's dead or alive, and the friendship.
But Iger's saying we need to make more realistic movie in terms of prices. So
meaning cheaper movies, meaning lower budget. Let's go back to the TV model where you have them walking around and only have them Hulk out 2 times a movie or a show, which is fine. But as long as you have enough content and story, you can do that stuff. You can definitely do that. I'm not against it.
And I think one thing that will help, and I know, is that they need to take try to get as much politics out of these shows and just get to the action and a story that's more universal that brings people together. You know, the whole point is you want to enjoy, and I think one of the things we've seen is there's been a fracture in a fandom. You really see that with DC and Marvel, and even within the DC, you know, which has had good properties, but people hate it because it's just DC, and you know, Star Wars and stuff. But you also see that some people who are liberal or conservative also, you know, they view some of these movies through certain prisms, and it's not necessarily always the case. So, I mean, I'm hoping that Iger can overall stop. He's powerful enough. If Disney breaks with the rest of the other owners, then I think the strike is over, in essence, right? Because if Disney breaks, but because they're the largest studio, they have the theme parks, you know.
Give them something. Actually, don't say you're interested. Plan on thinking about it. It's like my last thing would be the Metro card in New York. Now the Metro card is screwed up. You can't do the stuff you used to do. But in Jersey, they used to be able to take your pass and cross-platform it, use it on the bus, use it on the train, that sort of thing. Now, because of the pandemic, they've thrown that out in Jersey too. But the idea is when the Metro card first came out, New York was not interested in cross-platforming and saying the people who wanted cross-platform, they don't vote, right? And then they put it in there as one of the little notes that are in there, and people voted for a cross-platform transfer with the Metro card. And then New York with Giuliani was like, yeah, but we don't think this is going to work. Surplus immediately. So if you help and try to put, instead of worrying about, hey, we're giving them this money when we're taking, like people, like fans are saying, we're taking most of the risk. Find a percentage that you can give them so they can get some more money and say, you know what, you can't use these people's identity in perpetuity and say, I can use Princess Leia forever because she signed some line, and you can keep making Pez Dispenser keep redoing her over and over again, and Luke, and keep using them as what's the name over and over again.
If they pay their families and friends for it, I mean.
But then they're saying she can't say no. She couldn't say no to it.
She could say no, but she wants the money.
No, I'm saying she couldn't say no to a Pez dispenser. She don't want to see a Pez dispenser, a shampoo bottle, that sort of thing.
I know. All right, so look, we're all in.
Sorry,
We
I
all
got
hope.
too
We hope.
emotional.
We hope that Iger is able to end this strike. We hope that this strike ends soon. We definitely want everybody to get back to their jobs
Give
and
the
make
people
money.
some money. Give them something.
I mean, yeah, they're not making a lot. Most actors don't make a lot of money. Most actors have a second job, you know. And,
If you got a Seinfeld, why can't you get the Seinfeld money? They're like, oh, we took the chance on Seinfeld. Why should we keep having to pay them money?
It's just crazy.
But
Yeah.
they're getting paid that money, and they had to make the deals to better it because Seinfeld was already making the money. The rest of the actors had to get the money up, so once it started to be reshown, they would be making that money.
Exactly.
So,
So hey,
too
we're in agreement.
emotional.
So
Too emotional.
thank you very much for listening. Spinnerack.
Out.